Pat, I appreciate you coming out and making the time.
No problem. I got plenty of time. I'm retired.
That's awesome. You earned that. I wanted to, the unfortunate thing about podcast period is there's not enough time in the world to kind of really get you guys a story who set the path for so many, including myself. I tell the story often that the only reason I wanted to be a Green Beret is because of the stories that were told based on the things that you guys did, where, I mean, it was just a couple guys that were coming out, John Plaster.
Yeah, John.
That were coming out telling these stories, and I realized there's a segment of the population, even in the military, is elite, that are doing the most elite. And that's something that a lot of young men that I grew up with wanted to aspire to be. So I'm very humbled and honored to be sitting here in front of you. And I mean, nothing compared to what you guys went through. I'll say that first and foremost. I actually want to get into your service because it didn't start in the Army.
No.
It started with the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I had that history and tradition in my family of Marines. My grandfather was a Canadian Marine, got killed in World War I.
Wow.
And my father was a Marine, got screwed up on Peleliu. Came back, never was the same.
Wow.
So, and then my uncle was in third wave in Iwo Jima in the Marine Corps. So it was that, it's kind of a traditional thing. It was lucky for me because I met my wife in the Marine Corps.
Oh, awesome.
61 years married, so she was
awesome.
A corporal in the Marine Corps. So there's that. Of course, the Marine Corps has good troops. You can't say, I was a caisson during the siege.
As a Marine?
As a Green Beret.
As a Green Beret, okay.
Yeah, running operations across the fence.
Yep.
Tell you the truth, one of the missions I ran over there, 2 helicopters were shot down, put me in. It was a typical day in SOG, just the way it was. But the Marines up there, those poor guys, 2 things you had to have was a flak jacket and a helmet on,
At all times.
And they had no magazines. They just wore bandoliers because they only had a couple of magazines. Yeah, it's an old saying in the Marine Corps, more for the Corps and less for the troops.
Yeah, it's crazy. I imagine coming from a humble beginning in the Marine Corps as a young Marine gave you a lot of perspective and appreciation for what the Army and Special Forces had.
Yeah, I had 7 years in the Marine Corps.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I had second tour of duty. And I was on Okinawa, the 3rd Mardiv, and the first group was there. And it was kind of like, who are these guys, Because it was still an anomaly, SF. And you kept watching them, and, they'd go off for long periods of time. You wonder where they're going, what's going on here. Of course, in those days, they didn't wear berets because that came later on. But they stood tall, and then I asked my first sergeant one time, I said, who are those guys? He said, don't talk to them.
Probably didn't want to lose you as a grunt.
Exactly. But the Marine Corps, the Army's full of, Special Forces is full of former. I had an A-team at Devon's, and there was 3 of us on the A-team. They were former Marines.
Yeah, when I was a team sergeant in 10th Group in the Commanders and Extremist Force, one of my senior Bravos, which I was A-team Bravo as well, was a former Marine Corps sniper, and he was one of the best snipers I had. He went through SODIC and all the Green Beret training, but because of his experience in the Marine Corps, where especially as snipers, they focus so much on fieldcraft, he was good. He was one of the best.
Marksmanship training. I used to say there's cooks in the Marine Corps who are better shots than 11 Bravos in the Army.
That's true.
Because they just, everything is marksmanship training.
Yeah, the concept of every Marine's a rifleman.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I went from M1 to M4s by the time I got out. I said, what a transition.
That's a hell of a transition. How was the transition for you when you transitioned from the Marine Corps to the Army? I know today, if you did something like that, it can kind of be a pain, but I imagine during wartime, things are a little bit different.
Well, it was kind of funny. This was in '65 that I went. Of course, you don't have to go through boot camp. Of course, they already been through shit in the Marine Corps. But I was a Sergeant E5, and I lost one rank. Now you laterally go across. And I was a corporal, and everything in the Army was specialists.
Yeah, that's
there
right.
was no corporals.
There wasn't a corporal, yeah.
And it was kind of like, what do we do with this guy? And I came in the Army for jump school and Ranger school. I wanted to go to Ranger school too. So I made it through jump school, and I was waiting for a class date to go through Ranger school. Of course, in those days, there was no Ranger battalion. It was just a tab, It's still the same training, mostly officers going through at West Pointers and stuff. So I'm sitting there, and then while I was there, they sent me to Pathfinder school.
Oh, wow.
Which was kind of neat.
Yeah.
Of course, I was a 5-jump commando. I didn't know what the shit was going on. So I went to Pathfinder school, and next thing you know, I got orders for the 80 Deuce. And so I'm at Bragg and put me in 17 Cav, which was their main mission was secure the Division CP and stuff. They weren't. It was funny. We went to the Dominican Republic when they had that crap down there.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that we lost 92 people got killed in 80 Deuce.
Really?
Yeah, and the Marine Corps was down there too, and they lost a bunch of people.
I did not know that.
Yeah, we sunk on the Ozama River goes into Santo Domingo. We sunk a boat that had that the Cubans were bringing in with arms and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the guy sunk it with a 106, ended up in Special Forces with me, Tommy Shook, and he ended up being the Command Sergeant Major of the 75th Rangers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he always, everything was Ranger.
Yeah. So you were able to transition and go straight into training and straight to schools. I mean, going to jump school, Pathfinder, and did you eventually go to Ranger school?
It's so funny. I went to 80 Deuce, and you couldn't go to Ranger school unless you went to Raider school.
Yeah.
So I went to Raider school, and while I was in Raider school, Special Forces was really hurting. They were taking casualties, like going out of style. And there was a big push, to get people. But 80 Deuce didn't want to lose you.
Of course. Yeah.
And you couldn't go over there without permission. So I was another kid in my class. He says, "God, I want to go to Special Forces. I'm tired of this bullshit, spit and shine, and all this crap, 80 Deuce." And I says, "Why don't we wander over to Smoke Bomb Hill?"
Yeah, talk to the recruiters.
Yeah, walked over there. They took us in to give us a test. Of course, I had almost 10 years of infantry experience at that time. It was, everybody knows taking a test, it's always a mission and counts.
Yeah.
And as long as you get that right. So I came back, and I'll never forget my first sergeant. Was an old 187 guy, had been in Korea in 187. And he says, "God damn it, Watkins, what'd you do?" And I says, yeah. And he says, and it was so funny because there is a transition period. Like when I first went there, I still call the wall the bulkhead and the floor the deck, and drinking fountain the scuttlebutt. And I'll never forget my first sergeant says, "You know what you are? You're a swabby." Oh. And I says, "That's the Marine Corps for you. Everything is Navy talk."
It is, yeah. It is. What year did you go to Ranger school?
I never went to
you never went to Ranger school?
No,
okay.
I went to Raider school, got out of Raider school.
What is Raider school for people who are listening to this who aren't familiar? Because
it's a mini Ranger school.
Yeah.
Tell you the truth, I know people went through both.
It's tougher.
And said the Raider school was tougher.
It is,
and it was very demanding because it was based on the same thing, sleep deprivation, movement type of stuff. But I think not being a Ranger and going through, but there's still this unit until you're in the 82nd, this is us.
Yep.
You're coming back to your unit and all this, and you're going to be the backbone of the NCO Corps and the unit. So it was tough, but it helped me when I went to Special Forces because I ended up weapons.
Yeah.
And had to teach tactics and all the other stuff and all the weapons you had to be aware of. But it was a good course. I think if I'd went out, of course, Ranger School, you're a Ranger, right?
Yes. Yeah. Ranger qualified. I wasn't battalion.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, too.
Yeah.
At that time, there wasn't a battalion. There was just tab, right, Ranger tab. But the thing, I've talked to enough guys who went through both of them, and they said the Raider School was tougher. It was more hands-on demand. And the same thing with the 101st Head Commando School.
Yeah. Yeah, we had pre-Ranger.
You had to go through a pre-course.
Yeah, pre-course. And pre-Ranger for me was tougher than Ranger School itself because everybody was fighting for those positions or slots.
It's elimination time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Part your hair wrong and you're gone.
Oh, yeah. They're looking to trip people.
Yeah.
So you become a Green Beret, you're a weapons guy like me when you started out, and you go to Vietnam. What is it like being a Green Beret, knowing you're a Green Beret for the first time, and then you're entering where they're taking a lot of casualties? Do you remember kind of getting that assignment and heading that way?
I was in the 6th group. 6th group, which is no longer, was kind of like a rebel depot. A lot of guys. My team sergeant ended up getting the Medal of Honor, Snake Hoskins, and the senior radio operative, Fred Zabrakowski.
Wow.
So I was on a team that later 2 guys got the Medal of Honor.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of the guys that were coming back from Nam, they sent them there before they sent them off to a group, the 7th, or at that time, the 7th group was a big one there, and the 3rd. The 3rd was still doing South American stuff, down in, because they had the Canal Zone was the 8th group still before they disbanded it. So anyhow, it was kind of, you know how it is. You're listening to everybody, what's going on, where you going. And I actually thought I was going to be on an A team somewhere because that's Special Forces of eyes, training, and assist. So, I was getting caught up on mortars and all this stuff that I know, camp defense. And I got orders. I've been there a year. I got orders, and it said drawer 22. And I was being assigned to drawer 22. And I said, what the hell is this? So I walked in and asked Fred, who had been on an A team on his first, he was on the A team where the Idrang Valley operation went on, the camp got in. I said, what is this? He says, you're going to CNC. We didn't call it SOG, and it was command and control. And I said, what the hell is that? He says, they'll tell you when you get there, you can't talk about it.
Wow.
And I said, well, what does it consist of? And he said, well, you'll be okay. You got good wood skills and you got good background there. He said, but it's not a place for a guy to go to learn to be a soldier.
Yeah, you better be soldiering.
That's right. You better be ready. And anyhow, I wandered around wondering what's going on. My wife and I had 2 kids. And I said, shit, did I just step into a frying pan here? So I get to Nha Trang where the 5th group is at, and the command sergeant Major Childress, I knew him. He later got killed, but I was talking to him and I said, what is this? And he says, well, you're going to a recon unit. I said, what kind of recon unit? He says, well, there's 2 types of recon, of course, there's area and point and all this stuff. But there's tactical and strategic. He says, you're in the strategic. That means you're out of the range of artillery and in support elements. I went, good God. And I said, is it all Americans? He said, no, there's indig. So then it became, well, what kind of indig am I going to get? Because South Vietnamese had a bad reputation. There was an old saying, fire 4 times and dispose a weapon and run.
Yeah.
And, of course, their Ranger units are really good and their Marine units, but their actual grunts were bad. So, and then there were the mountain yards, that were, 3 days out of breechcloths and crossbows. Next thing you know, you give them a Zippo lighter and a goddamn car-15 in there. But like everything else, you're in a position to use them as a tool to keep alive.
So you have a complexity of you have cultural issues internally.
Yeah, immediately. And other teams, I had a feeling that, there were teams just weren't prepared to run local operations, let alone where we were going.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I went through the CIA recruited these guys, brought them in. The country team did. The CIA country team did. And they were all former so-called people with military background. Most of them were, there were CIDG in the camp or something. They just weren't. I had a couple really good ones, and I kind of wrapped everything right. And I'd been through Vietnamese language school, so I could communicate, basically with a military talk. And my interpreter, I spoke better Vietnamese and he spoke English. And it was really a dog and pony show. And all of a sudden, they decided, okay, these teams are, and they ended up, there was 5 teams of us that were operational that could go. These were teams that consisted of 3 Americans and 9 indig, right? I only had another American because the other American, I drove him off. He wouldn't make a pimple on a good soldier's ass,
Yeah.
I got rid of him.
Yeah. So now you're down to 2 Americans.
Just me and this kid that never seen a round fired in anger. And, but he was, he listened and he was, at least he was a good follower.
Yeah.
So first missions we got, we went to Khartoum because they were running active and they were taking casualties like it's going out of style. And so we went up there and they sent 5 teams of us up there. And I had only 1 American, all the rest had 3. So the first mission run out of there was Valor, and like I told you, the team got wiped down. And that's good for your morale. First mission out of CCN, out of Khartoum, the whole team gets wiped out. So it's like, you're here teaching trade crafts. Well, we needed that there too. We had the same problem that, I'd say half of our guys were Camo people. They had no infantry background except going to Special Forces training and that kind of stuff. But they still were not used to, far team and maneuver and, wedge formation, how you travel, all this stuff. Map reading skills were not like the RNSF today. It was a hurry-up deal, get them into combat. The guys that had infantry backgrounds knew a contour line from from
grid
just
line.
dying, yeah. And when you had a lot of contour lines, you're in trouble. Get some hiking shoes on. But the problem was we weren't prepared for recon. We were prepared to go to A camps. And this was a whole new phase because Special Forces, no mission too high, no ocean so deep, dive.
Yeah.
And they just put us out there. Well, the Khartoum was taking casualties like going out of style, and before you knew it, they had Spec 4s running teams because all the senior NCOs were either shot up or quit. Send me to an A camp. I didn't sign up for this. So my first mission, they came out, I said, well, I can't go into Laos. I don't have 3 Americans. So they came in and told me, you're going Daniel Boone. That's Cambodia. They were right on the tri-border area. So I didn't realize at the time Cambodia had different Marcus of Queenberry rules, no TAC air.
Wow.
You could only go in with 5 people, counting the Americans.
Wow.
All sterile equipment, except you still carried your Car-15. They used to go in with all Soviet bloc weapons, but that turned into a fiasco. And gunships, you could only use gunships. So there was, close air ground support was, a Huey going over firing an M60 out the door.
So basically unsupported Minimal support.
What you were was you didn't leave your LZ very far behind you because you needed to get out quickly.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I ran to Fred, who I knew, and he was running missions. He had a team there, and he'd been in country for a while. And I says, "What the hell?" And he says, "I ran one mission in there." He said, "Don't get in trouble. Don't get in trouble because you're not going to get support." So we're all in one Huey going in, and we flew right over a village. Right over a damn village. I look out the door, and all these NVA soldiers are looking up at us. I went, shit. So we hit the ground, and God, they couldn't get us off the helicopter fast enough. So you hit the ground, and you have to give a team okay. We had a covey above us, which is an O2, pack.
Yeah.
With an American riding in the right seat, which I did for a year later on.
It's a forward air controller that's in the aircraft,
right,
able to communicate to the ground.
Yeah, and also bringing all the tactical air and all the support, helicopters.
Yeah.
And the American in it was they helped the team move and basically survive in that environment. And the pilot was a gun guy, bringing in the ordnance stuff. So anyhow, I get on there and I give them a team okay. And so I said, we can't stay here, man. And start moving, and immediately, boom, boom, trackers. They're shooting guns.
Yeah, signaling each other.
Signaling. And also to put the fear in you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a psychological deal.
Compromise.
So I look at all them people. I took my three best people I trusted. And Tai Yu, my 01, had fought with the French Foreign Legion.
Oh, wow.
So he'd been around. He knew what the shit was going on. So I looked, and he had on his arm Crocodile VC, mean kill fucking VC tattooed on his arm. So they're not going to capture this dude. So anyhow, we start out, and there's trails everywhere. God, all over the place. I said, God damn, don't walk a trail, you'll die. So we're fighting our way through the vegetation. We're getting like 10 meters a minute if we're lucky.
Wow.
And stopping, everybody's wore out, adrenaline and pumping. And I came down, I says, I'm going to circle back towards the LZ because I know where I'm at there, and I got a fix, and I know they know where I'm at. And so I start down the hill, and Tai Yu grabs me by the arm, and he goes up the hill. I look up the hill, and the trail coming down, there's 5 NVA coming down the trail. They had pit helmets on and shorts, and they're looking all over the place. They know we were in that area. And I looked up and I said, "Okay, get down, don't make me." Next thing I know, my tail gunner starts shooting at me. Oh, fuck! This shit's on.
Yeah.
So 2 of them starts running back up the trail, and me and Tai Yu grease them and knock them down there all. And one of them somebody was wounded. He's screaming and yelling. And I says, okay, let's get back to LZ. So I get on the horn and call her an emergency. And they says, get high and dry, we can't come in and get you. And I says, I'm in contact. Get high and dry. Well, Fred was on the ground.
Yeah.
Where he got the Medal of Honor.
Well, in a battle.
In that deal, they
him.
shot down the helicopter.
Yeah.
He was in and killed everybody on the helicopter except the co-pilot. He went back in and drug him out.
Yeah.
And Fred was on the ground.
So that was going on
at the same
that time.
I'm in the world of shit in Cambodia, with no tactical air support.
Yeah.
And no gun support. Just me, three little people,
yeah.
and a kid from Indiana, Spec 4, who still hadn't fired around. He was so goddamn scared when all the shit happened. And so I says, God, we got to get back to that LZ. At least they know where I'm at when we get out. So I get back to the LZ, and the guy keeps on the horn. He says, can you all get in one helicopter? And I said, I'll ride on the strut, just get the damn thing in here,
Yeah.
He said, okay, I'll get you a bird in here. So anyhow, we put claymores out and stuff, just, in case. And they started trying to crawl in on us. They knew where we were at.
Hey guys, if you know Fieldcraft Survival, if you know Mike Force, if you know me, then you likely know about Montana Knife Company. Montana Knife Company was founded by a buddy of mine, Josh Smith, master bladesmith for 30 years. One of the most experienced knife makers in the country, and he's had no compromise and all the integrity because he's making all of his knives. He's made that decision early on, by the way, to make all of his knives made in the USA, manufactured locally in his home state of Montana. Designed, tested, and built by hunters, Montana Knife Company is a hunting knife company first and foremost. Likely the sharpest knives in the market. I mean, you likely need a bleeding control kit if you're going to own a Montana knife, and that's a good problem to have. They sell out instantaneously. But for the first time in the history of his company, because he's gotten ahead, he has stock of your favorite knives, including the Blackfoot 2.0, the Speedgoat, or the Stonewall Skinner. And you could save 10% by using MF10. That's Mike Foxtrot 10, MF10 for 10% off your first order at montanaknifecompany.com.
So we blew the claymores, and shit started going again. We started getting in contact. So, we're using the Vietnamese firing position on the ground, trying to suppress fire with fire, trying to get it. So the helicopter come over and he had a gunship with him. Oh, thank God. So it was 2 Hueys, and the gunship had an M5 system. It was a 40 mic system on the front.
Yeah.
And he come in and started shooting that up, and that pushed him back. So anyhow, make a long story short, we got out.
This is the first mission.
In my first mission.
First contact.
First contact. And 3 days later, I'm in the hardest target they got, Hotel 9.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
we're in shit again. And I'm strap hanging with another team because they didn't have enough people. So I took 2 of my people and went with them.
Yeah.
And that was not unusual in those days. People strapped hang, people jumped back and forth. And basically, the teams ran themselves. We did whatever the hell training we wanted, did everything.
Yeah.
Basically, because our senior officers and stuff didn't know how the fuck shit ran.
Yeah. So it was very much NCO ran.
It was NCO run. All the teams in those days, the recon teams, were enlisted. There were no officers. Later on, the officers started, lieutenants, and OCS guys.
That's a disappointing factor for. I mean, Delta is NCO heavy and ran, and then you look at Green Berets today.
Barswell, Eldon's a good friend of mine. He was the first leader of Delta.
Yeah.
He's got a boy. It's a master sergeant in Delta now.
Yeah. So senior SOG leaders or senior NCO SOG experienced operators stood up Delta, and they understood the lessons.
Yeah, it was
more.
blue light then.
Yeah, and now, and you look at SF, the biggest issue that Special Forces Command faces now is they're very officer ran, and they're going through a lot of issues because of that.
Yeah, you can't tell experience how to do things without having their input.
Yeah.
Everything's input driven.
Yeah.
Mostly in Special Forces. I can't send 20 words a minute on the goddamn, CW. I can't, do the things a medic does. I don't know advanced demolitions and all this stuff that an engineer does. And I guarantee you that team leader doesn't know how to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he scratched the surface on everything, but he's not a master of anything.
He's basically been through leadership courses.
Yeah.
And he's got a different brand of animal he's trying to lead.
Yeah, to wrangle that.
The guys with the 50-mile scares.
Yeah.
And it was even worse in those days because all of our officers were OCS.
Yeah.
And they basically got rifted. It's a shame. Some of them were shipped for hot were good. Ended up being good. But
your experience is most of them were not squared away.
Most of them just they didn't have respect for the NCO Corps and what they were facing. It ended up, I don't know if it was due to their fear that they were being judged. But of course, in those days, we didn't have an officer branch.
Yeah.
They were everything. Hell, I had a chemical officer one time. It was
Really?
XO on a team. And
Wow.
It was crazy.
This is before the
Branch.
18 series Alpha
Yeah,
or 18
yeah,
Alpha
yeah.
existed. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that could be complicated.
And
That could-
most of them were in there to get their ticket punched and move on.
yeah, get it on the OER.
That's right, if they could
then move
live.
Let's talk about well, how many missions did you wind up running for SOG in Vietnam?
I spent 27 months in SOG. And over a period of 67 to 72 when they closed the doors. That's another horror thing. You know, you've been through that stuff in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We always get in these situations that we bust the bubble and get the fuck out, you know.
Yeah.
We never finish anything anymore. But anyhow, what happened, you know, if you had that, you know, been in SOG deal, you know, you were an animal they needed, mostly if you'd been there before and done it before. The crazy thing is about it, shows you how screwed up Special Forces was in those days. They were starting to adapt schools to fit the mission back stateside. And I was in Okinawa in the first group, and I just got back off of off a down south mission. We went down there for 2 months on a mission. And I flew cover because they needed cover riders. They asked me to come back. And I was waiting for my wife and kids to get there, so hell yeah, I'll go back. So I come back from that, family's there, get them finally settled and stuff. I get orders to go to Vietnam, to go back. And the funny thing is, I had to go to Bragg to go to recon school.
You had to go to
Yeah, I
recon
had to go to
school.
Bragg.
And you were at this time, I imagine, a 1-0.
I've been a 1-0 for a year. I flew Covey.
You
for
should be
6
teaching
months.
the recon school.
This is funny. I got there, the guy running the school was Bill Craig. He was a team sergeant in Long Bay when he got overran. And they would have perished had it been for SOG going up there. Because the Marines wouldn't go. The Marines would go, the commander wouldn't send them. He didn't want the body count, you know. And there was a hate thing with Special Forces and the Marine Corps at that time. But anyhow, make a long story short, you know, I go to this school and I walk in the door in my my TWs in those days, you know, fruit cocktail all over, and all my qualification badges and stuff, and, you know, 3 Purple Hearts, and walk in there and I first thing out of Craig, what the hell are you doing here? I said, call Mrs. Alexander, who's in charge of assignment branch for Special Force. Ask her, and she told me the only way I'm going to give my family back to the States to come to STAM school. He said, well, he says, you're not going to work here. And I said, what do you mean? He says, you're going to be sharpshooting everything these instructors say. And I said, well, it's better for them to know now than to know later. So I went to one damn class, and a kid teaching the class had been in an alert unit in the 101st.
Wow. And he was teaching recon.
And he was teaching SOG.
SOG recon, yeah. Because it was a preparatory course to get staged for going
Dan,
for SOG.
this is 71. Oh, shit, we'd been fighting this damn thing for, you know, hell, a lot of guys, you know, were on their 3rd tours in SOG, you know. And then these guys are really they should have been taught, and they've been better off sending them to the Ranger School, learning fieldcraft, than sending them to this. And you know, you've been through enough schools and stuff to know there's 2 things they do wrong in any infantry school or movement. They've always got a deadline to go from insertion to point of contact. And it turns into a race to get there.
Yep.
You lose security, you lose movement, you lose all the things that you need in a real combat situation. And it was the same thing there, you know. They'd go out on these damn operations, and they'd have fake trackers on them, and they say, and I come back and I says, this ain't going to work. I says, if you get these people on you, you got 2 choices: get out or die. because you're a small unit, basically relying on air support to keep you alive. And and these people, you're in their backyard. That's like me going into Detroit and walking the streets in Detroit and thinking that these other people in Detroit don't know those streets better than me.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so you got to realize there's two things in this type of situation you can do. You can drive on and continue your mission and die. Basically, these people are going to beat you sooner or later. They're not a bunch of dummies. They haven't survived all this stuff by being dummies, and they had good leadership, and they knew what they're doing, and they had hunter-killer teams, and they had all this stuff. But you need to be in a position to get your ass out when it came time to get your ass out, to live, to fight. And the biggest problem we had in SOG was our mission. Our mission was very hard to understand. A good example is we never got a full map sheet. We got a map sheet that was cut down to 9 by 9. Had no index, had no goddamn reliable story. And half the time you put in, you got put in off your map sheet. Because these pilots want to get you out of their goddamn planes, you know?
Yeah.
You can't blame them, you know? You're a living target. You're going into Indian country. And these guys are scared shitless. They're just young pilots and stuff. You
So
know?
they were compartmentalizing a lot of things, all decentralized. So it was hard to figure out where you fit into the big picture.
Yeah, well, I always had this opinion. I fit into survival phase. I hate, you got to realize that you're no good dead and your team being wiped out. You're better off, lick your wounds, get out, and be ready for the next one. Because I ran 19 missions across the fence, and not one of them I didn't make contact.
Every single one you made contact.
With small units, you're talking three Americans. And
that's a big deal. I mean, 27 months in SOG, or in combat period in Vietnam, was a big deal, let alone the highest attrited and most decorated organization in the military. I think in U.S. history.
And we didn't, and there was no tell you, John Placer's the guy that really turned the tide of recognition when he wrote his book. And of course, it was all about Pontoon, because that's where John was at the time. He didn't talk about CCN and CCS and the other projects and stuff. But it led people to know that there were people out there snooping and pooping in bad places.
Yeah, that book should be a mandatory read for everyone.
And then Tilt did a great job in his books, and a couple other people jumped in and wrote books and stuff that had literary. Tilt was a journalist. He went to college for journalism, so he knew what he was. But the bad thing was, you come back to brag and you couldn't talk about anything because you're in a classified unit.
Yeah.
And show you, and they keep talking about stuff today that would get out if they knew about it. Well, let me tell you, there were at least 2,000 guys that were in SOG from the start to the end. Of them, maybe 600 were operational people. The rest were support people and that. But there was no talking about it.
Yeah.
You didn't come back to brag and run your mouth because that stuff was still going on and your friends are over there.
Yeah.
And the only reason this stuff came out really was when Daniel Ellsberg in the Pentagon Papers blew it. He knew about the missions because of his place in the Pentagon and released it. And the New York Times got a hold of it.
Yeah.
And that blew the cover story. But still, nobody talked about it.
Yeah, there wasn't any deep narratives or stories about specifics.
No.
Until Plaster came out with SOG and Secret Commandos.
And Tailwind.
Yeah.
That caused it, because that put CNN in bad light, making this boogeyman.
Yeah.
And the casualty rate. The 16 guys I started out as 1-0s with the FOB4, only 4 of us came back in normal rotation. All the rest were killed or wounded and medevac down.
When you when you mentioned a third of, is it SOG total were big Army guys or regular infantry guys?
It was kind of funny. Our senior officers, they had Singalap was an old Judd guy in World War II, and he was OSS and stuff, and he was in Saigon. We called it Khakiville because they were partying there. They playing tennis and golf tennis courts and stuff. I mean, it was a whole different world. And he was running all the when I was there, he was the main guy, side guy. Then another colonel, but it was just a colonel slot to run the whole operation. And we fell under the 5th Special Forces Group, but all our missions and stuff came straight out of the Pentagon.
Yeah, CIA.
Yeah, it was. CIA started. It started out with the CIA. The country teams had a lot of influence with us. Then the big green machine come in and said, "No, we don't want you guys telling us what the shit to do. We run our own stuff." So they fell into the background. They moved into Laos and running Air America and all those. They had different spook programs they were running. They were in certain teams into North Vietnam and stuff. We called them Stay Behind Forever teams. And there was all kinds of black programs, a Phoenix program, and all kinds of
all
black
clandestine.
All clandestine. And all the guns and stuff in those days were special forces. We had... we were Op 35 and Op 32 was a naval, SEALs. We're just getting our foot on the ground. We used to have a saying, "Sure can't swim." They should have sent everyone in the Ranger School before they started.
I think that still evolved. We were thinking the same thing in the 2000s. Did they start using big Army guys to augment because of casualties? And they said, we need to start filling the gaps.
What the problem was that, Special Forces is still running the A-team deal. They still needed, 12 men on an A-team.
Yeah, that was the primary mission, at least for the big Army.
Devise, train, and assist indigenous forces in guerrilla warfare and intent. So they still had the A camps going. Then they started the Mike forces, which were exploitation forces led by Special Forces. And they became bigger and bigger because they needed them for the A camps. When the A camps got in trouble, you had to send the Mike forces in to save their butts because the regular Army didn't want anything to do with us. It's kind of like, well, you guys think you walk on water, lots of luck. And then, there was Delta Project who ran the in-country missions, and we just got overextended. It's like when I went through training group, it's a shadow of what you guys went through in training group. I mean, they needed to pump us in and get us out. Yeah. It's like, you know how to adjust your sights to an M16? Yeah, well, you're a Green Beret.
That's awesome. Well, the priority is war, right? Attrition, you guys are losing guys.
It was, they needed warm bodies. And, I'm not taking anything away from our training because we did have good training and stuff, but it wasn't what you guys went through.
You were learning on the ground, though, in combat.
Our training was combat. Yeah. And it was combat that we weren't prepared for. Yeah. It got down to where, in 71 and 72, when I was back over there, of course, all the units had left, the 5th group had taken their colors back. And we were wearing black baseball caps.
Really?
Yeah. Once
5th group pulled, it was just black baseball caps.
Black baseball caps.
Wow.
Took the SF patches off and put on MACV patch.
Wow.
And I was at CCS at Bambi Tut, and I had the bright light team because of my experience. They said, "Oh yeah, Watkins, you can do that, man." And a bunch of people in the head shed knew me from before, so I was the operations sergeant for the recon company, and I had the bright light team because we had all American gunships going across the border. We had SOS Air Force. They had H model Hueys and with miniguns on them. And they wouldn't fly across the border. They have Americans to come in and bail their ass out. So I had the team, the bright light team. And I went in on 3 missions to recover aircraft and get bodies out of stuff.
Were you just like you were in the operations in the technical operations center, and then something would go wrong? You just run out to the
I was
aircraft?
in the recon company area. I was operations sergeant. I had a captain who was in charge. He'd never been in combat. He was looking for a CIB.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's how bad it was. And then camps, they're bringing tanks in everywhere. They overran Pontoon, and DMZ got overran, and they're pushing. The NVA, man, they're fire maneuvering and continuing their mission. They didn't give a shit if peace treaties my ass. So we're in a situation that keep your bags packed because we might be leaving this place. And it was bad for morale, too, because we had all mountain yards. They were really good. And most of them had, one of the guys I had in my team had been with Mad Dog, with Jerry Schreiber. And so they were good. They were well trained. All the other teams I had to train them from the ground up. God, I had mountain yards or, how to breechcloths, a case on.
Wow.
And they were hunter-gatherers. They weren't the killer ones. A lot of them worked in tea plantations and stuff.
Wow.
And their eyeballs are this big.
Yeah, and you got to turn them into soldiers, then recon specialists, and then go out and operate with them.
Famous story I got in. Of course, I'd had 12 missions across the fence when I went in there. And some of the guys that came in with me were the same way. We were hardened from CCN and running missions there. I ran a mission out of NKP, Thailand, into North Vietnam on a wiretap mission. Took 4 hours for a helicopter to get to us.
Wow.
Yeah, just how bad the operations were, but it was crazy because these people knew everybody's leaving. They weren't dumb, they were looking, and it was kind of like nobody, the Americans. I don't want to be the last person to die in this motherfucking place we give up on. And 72. All the combat arms people were leaving, and everything was the Vietnamization had started, whether they like it or not. And we had a division down the road at Bammy to infantry Arvin. And one morning I was going into Bammy to pick up some fruit and stuff for my indige. And that was one of my jobs, mess sergeant too, I guess. Get food and stuff, because we had our own mess halls and stuff for the indige. And I was in a Jeep. I was the only American. I had two Rade with me, good people. And we go past the compound, and all these Vietnamese people were in there going through buildings. I said, "Stop! What's going on?" And so one of the guys got out and started. And most of them are mountain yards in there. Started talking to me. He said, the chicken shit Vietnamese left.
They just abandoned their post?
They abandoned it because they had intel that the NVA were coming in with tanks.
Oh, wow.
So I went back and told the commander, like Colonel, I says, shit's going to break loose. We don't have any intel. We're not getting any information. We need to send out some aerial surveillance and stuff to see what's going on. And he looked at me and he says, well, that sounds like a good idea, Sarge. Why don't you run this operation? Oh, here we go again. All these goddamn guys with leash on their shoulders.
Yeah, why don't you just do
Sergeant,
that for me?
you got all this experience. Why don't you just take that under your belt? It's like, in your resume, you can put this down as one of your side jobs, So anyhow, I went in and got a hold of the goddamn the Green Hornets. They were called the Air Force gunships that ran, and they had a major in charge of them. And I went over and talked to him. I got to be pretty good. You always want to be friends with the gun crews and stuff. I got good. And I told him the situation. He says, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "We need to go in and look at the main arteries coming in here. They're bringing tanks. They're not running those things through the jungle to get here." I said, "They're coming down. These guys," and they had T-55 tanks and old T-34s, World War II deals. So they went out and ran some area reconnaissance, came back, and they're all, "Fuck, man, they're coming."
Is this that FOB4?
This is his FOB, at that time, FOB5. It was CCS.
So it's coming. They identified and saw them.
They were already in contact with tanks at Khantoon.
Wow.
And they shot down, I'll tell you the truth, my commander went up to take over Khantoon, and he was in the Air America C-47. And they got shot down coming in and killed everybody on the plane.
Wow.
And he wanted me to go with him and take over a recon company. Wow. I said, "Do I have a choice?"
Yeah.
I want out of this place. But, they were bringing tanks down there. We packed up and left 2 days later.
So the whole base got abandoned because
we turned it. Well, I tell you, the Mountain Yards had an organization called FURO. It's kind of like a Mountain Yards society, and they had an uprising against the Vietnamese in 1965. Special Forces was instituted in that, and they got the commander relieved. There was all kinds of shit on. But they had the head of FURO, who was a colonel in Rade. I went over and got him. I says, "We're leaving." And he looked at me and he says, "We need all the weapons." So I had an arms room. God, I had Car 98s in there, German Car 98s. Wow. I had carbines, Sten guns, you name it. I had a room full of goddamn stuff. And plus, I had M16s in there and M14s and stuff. And I says, "Here's the keys." So I had them all in racks. And I said, "Here's the keys tonight. Come and get them." So the next morning I come in there and there wasn't anything left. They'd taken all the animal and stuff because they were getting ready to go underground.
Versus putting it in the enemy's hands.
Yeah, well, they were going to start a guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
Whether it was South Vietnamese or North Vietnamese, they didn't give a shit. They just hated Vietnamese.
It's insane.
And here you suffer that problem when you start working with indigenous. I mean, no matter where you're at, you guys had the same problem religious-wise.
Every rotation.
Yeah, I mean, that's even worse. I was at Fubai, I was flying Covey, and the guy flying Covey with me was who ended up being Command Sergeant Major's Special Forces, Spider Parks. And I just come out of the Ashall with his team. I had a team on the ground, and he was in a Jeep and he said, "We got to go to Da Nang." And I said, "What for?" And he said, "We got to go for a promotion board." I said, "You're kidding me." "What?" He said, "No." And I was eligible B7, which should have been automatic. I had 12 years in goddamn service and did all this crap.
Yeah.
And anyhow, they flew there was about 20 of us from FOB1 in Mylock, or on that side, that went up there for a promotion board, running all the way from Spec 4 to E6s like myself going up. The only reason you didn't do E7s, you had to be promoted through branch.
Yeah.
They couldn't screw with that. But we went up there for it. "Do you have a clean pair of fatigues to wear?" And I said, "Shit, no. And I'm not going to wear any. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Promote me or I'll move out."
Because they wanted a formal board.
It was a
combat zone.
And a combat zone.
Yeah.
And Da Nang at FOB4, I got pictures in there before the attack and after. It was like a resort there for these guys. None of our senior officers ever seen combat with us. They never went out there. Not one of them ever went into Laos. They didn't know what Laos was. It was on a map. That's all they know. They were too busy trying to get their bird.
Of course. I'm interested to hear, obviously being in SOG at the time was a very compartmentalized special access program. Were the officers read into what SOG mission was? Or did they have an understanding at least?
They've been read into as well as you could be read into it.
High level, but nothing in detail.
Yeah, well, one of the problems we had, there was no training asset, like I told you. Hell, guys went out and wore what the hell they wanted to. There was no uniform.
Yeah.
As you can see, some of the pictures I got in there, we all had sterile fatigues and stuff. Some people, we used to take spray cans with black and take the gloss off of your uniforms and stuff to make it look. But it was, we had a bunch of weirdos in SOG. If you last, Jerry Schreiber, I knew Jerry went through training group. I mean, he had went off the deep end, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I walked into the club with Fred Zabakowski when I was up there running missions at Pontoon, and Jerry's sitting there, and he's got this red smoking jacket on. And he had this German Shepherd named Klaus with him. And he had, this is in the middle of the daytime, he had a pyramid of Schlitz beer cans in front of him. And he's sitting there all by himself with his dog. And he had a monkey on his shoulder, and the monkey is shit down his shoulder.
And he didn't care.
He was in another world. He was in Jerry world. And anyhow, I walked over and I said, "Hey, Jerry, how you doing?" He said, "I don't know you, motherfucker. Who in the fuck are you to talk to me?" And Fred grabbed me and he said, "Fuck you, Schreiber, you asshole." So I started to walk away, and Jerry said, "Hey, Pat, I'm just kidding you. I don't know, fuck you, Schreiber. I shit in places you never seen."
So you get to this place and you're there for a promotion ceremony. So there's no, because I imagine FOB4 like we had in Afghanistan, we had fire bases that were remote, and I was in fire bases that had no support. Yeah, for sure. And the FOB4 was like an AOB. It was like a huge base.
Yeah, it was.
Larger base.
It supported FOB1 and them.
Oh, okay.
There were recon teams there, and there were also they were still they'd run out of Cam Duck, running operations out of Cam Duck, but yeah, that's how it looked.
So this is FOB4.
Or CCN at that time.
Yeah.
They changed it from C. And then there's a picture on the other side that was done after an after-action report and stuff of how it was hit and the buildings that were destroyed and stuff.
Wow, that's backstopped by the ocean.
Yeah, it was right in the South China Sea. We had people get drowned in there. The riptide was unbelievable.
Wow.
I was scuba qualified, and I ain't going out there.
Wow.
You know how rips are. I mean, hell, you can go in the water and end up in China.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about FOB4, because here's what's interesting, guys, and we talked about this before with John Stryker-Meyer. What's very unique about SOG, obviously, is the fact that these guys and how they operated were doing something that was very covert and classified. It did not get declassified until well after, obviously, the Vietnam War ended in 1975. And your recognition of Valor did not take place until you were awarded the Distinguished Service Cross in 2014. I mean, you had V devices for BSMs, for Bronze Stars and stuff.
I had what they called the SOG Silver Star. The Bronze Star would be.
It's your service medal, SOG service medal. But then you were recognized for this in 2014 and received the Distinguished Service Cross. We'll talk about this offline on other kind of things that we're doing, including the Fieldcraft app. But everybody that I know who knows about this specific citation and all of the elements of this, across the board unanimously say that this is a Medal of Honor recipient sitting in front of me. and that everything about the actions that took place this day over the course of 2 days, the 22nd and the 23rd of August, were earning the Medal of Honor, and you're here to tell the story.
That.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because not only just with Stryker Meyer, but all the guys that I've talked to are like, "What is going on?" And we're even personally talking to congressmen in Utah and senators in Utah. I have a scheduled appointment on Thursday or on Monday, talking with one of the staffers, because this is something that should obviously be upgraded to a medal.
Yeah, I know Mike Lee's dad, Rex. We were friends.
Yeah. Let's get into it. How does this thing kick off? Where are you at? And what
Well, I was at Fubai. I was a cover writer for Observer. Me and Spider Parks were, and like I said, I just come out of the ash shop, giving a team okay for a team we had on the ground, and we landed. We were in 02 Sky Masters, with front and rear engine push pull. That's what packs were over there, Dan. And we landed at Fubai Airport, which was a very busy place because Marines ran operations out of there too, and everything. And Spider was waiting for me in Jeep, told me I had to go to this promotion board at CCN, Da Nang, former FOB4. And I thought he was kidding, and he said, "No, we got to go. The helicopters are raiding King Bees." So I would grab my stuff. I turned my car 15 in because they needed it, because they were running low on the gun. Because it was not designed for what we were using it for. It was, to tell you the truth, it was a crew serve weapon on tanks and stuff for the crew, because they could fold it up and it was smaller. And all of a sudden we ended up being the gun per se of Special Forces SOG. So I had a Swedish K. I just took a Swedish K, which is a piece of shit, and I had a Swedish K. Blowback weapons.
Little sub gun.
Yeah, what it is, shoot me 5 times and I'll scratch. So anyhow, I had a Swedish K, and I had it I had a carry bag with all my maps and stuff in it. And I, of course, had all my survival equipment on, flight stuff with ERG-10s and all the crap I needed. So I went out and jumped on a helicopter, as it was with Spider and 4 or 5 other guys. And one of them was Joe Conlon, a friend of mine who was a former Marine too, who was at Mylock, a team near Mylock. And I hadn't seen him in a while, and we were bullshitting. So we get to Da Nang, and it's hustle bustle because they just had a unit meeting from the FOBs. Commanders to the FOBs had been in there. And Jack Warren, Colonel Warren, was the commander. We called him Whiskey Jack Warren because he was always drunk. So anyhow, they were in there. And I ran into Colonel Smith from Pontoon, and I knew him from running me and his sergeant major. And they were looking for a place to sleep. And they so-called transit barracks was full. So we went down to this half-finished barracks and went in there. And Spider come over to me and he says, "Hey, can I have your Swedish K?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I'm going to Da Nang, to House 22. Do you want to come?" And I said, "No, man, I'm beat. I don't need any of that." And so he said, "Okay." So I give him my Swedish K. I still had a 45. And with 3 magazines. So, of course, I'm in a goddamn place with 50,000 Americans and Indians running around and stuff. I didn't have because we'd got hit before there in December of '67 when we got hit. Not like this, but we got hit. So they were showing a movie that night to the troops. I'll never forget, it was In Cold Blood, Truman Capote.
Really?
Yeah.
How ironic.
And I'm in there with Conlon watching this damn thing. And I says, "Oh, man." I've seen enough blood and guts. I don't need any more. Let's go back. So I went back and hit. And being a caisson and stuff, you always sleep with a gun on your pillow and stuff. And never went down to my skivvies. Always had my jungle fatigues on, pants and stuff on. And we're in a room, me and Conlon, with 2 second lieutenants just come in the country. And when you come in at Da Nang at that time, they didn't give you a fast shooting weapon. They give you an old M2 carbine. And they still had been in Cosmo paper and stuff,
Brand new.
And they had 230 round magazines with them. And these guys had these damn things. They hadn't turned them in because they hadn't been assigned to their FOB they were going to. So they're in the room and they didn't know how to tear the damn weapon down. So I showed them how to take it apart and do everything on it. So we're sitting there bullshitting. And I told this one guy, I says, you're in Vietnam now. This is the place you can always get. I said, I was here before when we got hit. And he looked at me like, oh yeah, shit, Sarge, So I hit the sack, me and Conlon did, and about 2 o'clock, I heard a boom.
2 in the morning.
I heard a boom. And I thought we were taking incoming. But me and Conlon both had been a caisson, and we knew what incoming was. We took it, we were taking over 100 rounds a day there, and mostly 155. And I told, of course, being a good SF trooper I was on the floor with my mattress over the top of me. And, hoping that little piece of cotton up there would stop some flak. So, and Joe was laying next to me, and this one stupid-ass lieutenant went to the window and got shot.
Right out the gate.
Yeah, right out the gate. And I knew they were in the compound. They'd come into the compound, and all of a sudden, the hooch next door blew up.
How long did it last from the time that it was 2 in the morning?
Yeah, it was 2 in the morning till...
a guy got killed the next day by a sniper, so it was still ongoing.
Yeah, they were still... they probed us the next night again, just to see, just to fuck us up. And I had the 81 millimeter mortar, me and Spider, and Kim Boudreaux, an old friend of mine who had the recon team Cobra, and we were firing illumination all night, and they hit us again. But we were, of course, they were ready for it by then. They had everybody on the wire and stuff. But we went, after we secured the talk and stuff, we went down towards the recon area and got in, past the mess hall in the recon area, and I could smell coffee. There in the mess hall there, the Indians were brewing coffee. So I walked in there and got a canteen cup of coffee. And Colonel Smith was in there with his thing, and he says, "God damn it, Sergeant, what's your name?" And I told him, and he says, "Give me your information. I'm writing you up for a declaration." Of course, that's the last I ever heard of it. And so I give him my name and stuff, and I'm still carrying the AK, and everybody's looking at me like a cyclops eye. And all of a sudden, we heard some commotion outside, and there were 3 NVA trying to come towards, they were suicidal, coming towards the thing. And again, everybody in the world shot them motherfuckers. And they got knocked down. There are bodies everywhere. So went up to the recon area, and Colonel Warren's still with us, and picked up Leo Simpson, who was the operations sergeant when I was there. And he was there with 2 other guys, and they were both wounded, and we started policing up bodies. And the sergeant major of the compound was dead. He shot right to his, but most of them got killed as they come out of their hooches. And of the guys that got killed, all but 2 were support people.
Oh wow, all but 2.
And one of the kids that got killed going out the door was going to his fighting position. He was on a recon team, never ran a mission yet.
Yeah.
And It was basically, nobody thought, these plywood goddamn hooches with some, you seen that picture, with sandbags around. They're not going to give you any damn protection from an AK round.
Yeah.
And what they were doing, they came in and set up machine guns.
Yeah.
And shooting into the hooches in the recon area.
Wow.
And it was, of course, I had a concussion, bad concussion. I started having migraine headaches and didn't know what was going on. Got vertigo, stumbling all over myself.
Wow.
So they finally medevaced me down to the Naval Field Hospital down the road. I got in there and got all these Marines had been wounded and shit in there, and I started seeing, I said, God, I don't belong in this place. These guys are, these poor medics, and going crazy. So I hitched the ride back to FOB4.
And got back to work.
Got back to work. That's what SF does.
That's true. I know a lot of guys who've, even in my time, have been injured and snuck away just to get back to the fire base.
I moved 3 times, and it was like, well.
How does this unfold as far as the post process? Why did it take so long to be recognized for this specific event, despite a long career in SOG?
Nobody was medal hunting. Special forces.
Nobody cared.
Do that shit.
Yeah.
It's always this thing. That's our job. That's what we get paid. I was getting $55 a month combat pay.
That's a big deal.
Master parachute was making $55 a month. Man, and tax free. So it's just the way it was. So they started pushing it and got Crawford. One of a leg, believe it or not, they'd been in the 196 light infantry unit in Vietnam. Was friends with Crawford, and he was a lawyer. And him and Mulholland, General Mulholland, were friends because he represented SOCOM, Ray Kellefeld. He was a Cuban, escaped communist. So he wrote up the citation and stuff and took Conlon's, he was with me all night, so he seen what I did and wrote it all up. And it took 3 years to make it through the dog and pony show.
Yeah. And then they wound up downgrading it to a DSC?
They never submitted it as a Medal of Honor. They were going to submit it as Silver Star, and what happened was all these guys said, shit, no, he should have at least a DSC. Then Colonel Barr said, well, he should have the Medal of Honor. He says, Bob Howard got the Medal of Honor for fucking strap hanging on the team. He said, I was his commander. He said, Pat's one of my best NCOs I ever served with. He said, not only for this reason, for other reasons. So they put it in for a DSC. And I think basically one of the reasons that other people thought their command at FOB4 should have been court-martialed.
Because of the lack
no security. Never did. And they let all this shit happen.
Yeah.
And it's the old cover your ass deal. If this guy fails up the chain of command, why is this guy in charge? Why is this happening? And it became a cover your ass deal. The highest decoration given out for that whole deal were, in retrospect, it was given out like Blankenship, the kid driving the Jeep, he made Major, and they wrote him up later on. It was all later stuff.
Yeah.
They didn't want to, there were a lot of Bronze Stars and that stuff, but nothing that would draw attention
of course
to the failures of command.
Of course. It's always seemingly political when it comes to taking
like
care
everything.
of the guys.
No, it don't matter where you're at. I mean, it's political. There was an old saying in the Marine Corps, when I was in the Marine Corps, wow, the only thing a goddamn infantryman gets a Purple Heart.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, you look at all the goddamn, even in Vietnam, fucking generals and stuff, hell, the commander of Quezon, who was an asshole, gets a Navy Cross.
Wow.
And it was just that way. Yeah, Special Forces is more than the beret. It's the camaraderie. We owe each other,
Yeah.
I don't owe anything to anybody else but the guys I served with,
Of course.
They mean everything.
Well, let's talk about, lastly, how did you wrap this up? How did you wrap up a career post-Vietnam? Because you retired in 1981.
80.
80.
Yeah.
So you retired in 80, and you closed out the Vietnam War with a lot of combat. Did the group, did SWIC, Special Warfare Center, take advantage of all the things you've learned and put you to work?
It was after the war, the big green machine took over. You know how that goes.
Needs of the Army?
And they were a big deal to goddamn disband Special Forces.
Really?
Yeah. The only thing that saved us is all these fringe stuff happening. Panama, Grenada, all this stuff happening. And all of a sudden, hey, we need those guys that have funny Girl Scout hat.
Yeah. Keep them around.
Yeah, and we don't have to pay them much, and they'll do anything.
They'll do anything.
And so there was that camaraderie. Plus, Special Forces at that time, we were a jury rig outfit. Everything we did, we scrounged, went to wind warfare training. We had to go I took people to Natick Lab in Boston and said, hey, we'll experiment with your shit if you give it to us, and we're right up. So, we still using goddamn World War II tents and stuff, We, our sleeping bags are old down sleeping bags. We didn't have any, and everything was bought off the backs of the troops. Just to be an SF, man, we paid our own way. We did it's like today, for every goddamn qualification badge you got, you get some kind of money for it. Mm-hmm. I got 250 Halo jumps. I got $55 a month, man. Same as I got for static line.
Yeah. I got a neck surgery for Halo stuff.
I was Rocket J Squirrel the first time and we were jumping old MC1-1s with slip risers, I mean, we were lucky to hit goddamn DZ, when we go out of that damn thing. And, our altimeters were on our reserves. You had to pull it up to look at it. I'll never forget, I come back from Vietnam and they were jumping paracommandos.
Yeah.
And they were packing their own shoes. They didn't have any rears who qualified to do it. And had guys that had been in sports parachute clubs and stuff, coming in and started. And first jump I made at 20 grand with a goddamn PC. I didn't know how the damn toggles worked.
Jesus.
It was, and then scuba school was the same way. I went to goddamn open circuit with UDT in the Philippines.
Wow.
They didn't use Emerson rigs. Everything was that was off Okinawa, and so I came back to the States. And I was on the Scuba Halo team. Oh, the worst damn team I ever been on.
Whiskey Niner.
Yeah, everybody forgets it's a means of infiltration.
Yeah.
It's not
a sports club.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, how many jumps did you get this month? Fuck you, man. Can you lay a mortar?
Yeah.
That's good. And I went to the sergeant man. I said, I need off this guys. These guys couldn't operate in the real world, man.
Yeah.
It's like weekend, let's go out and hanky pop,
Yeah.
So anyhow, I came back and they said, well, you got to go to Key West. And I said, what for? Well, you're not closed circuit qualified. I said, I got a better idea. Just take it off my records. It don't make any difference anyhow. What's that little badge mean? Mm-hmm. Well, you need to get close. So I went down there and Walter Shoemate's running the goddamn school.
Wow.
And me and Walter, he was a SOG guy.
Yeah.
Me and Walter have been friends for years. And I said, you harass me, you motherfucker, and you know who I am. I said, I don't need to get this yet. So anyhow, I went through that, got, closed circuit qualified and come back. And it was like, in the 10th group, the big thing was on weekends, they go out and raid fucking lobster traps and stuff, school guys.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, man. I just put me on an A team with normal special forces guys.
Yeah.
Don't need all the badges.
Yeah. And you at the tail end of your career, I imagine post Vietnam, with all that experience, the global war on terror veterans are having now, likely, you have a lot of new guys that don't have any combat experience.
Yeah.
They're looking to you guys to teach them everything.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem we had was we lost contact with this. Our biggest problem, and you guys suffered the same thing, biggest problem was they wanted to forget Vietnam. And it's like Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It's
Pretend like it didn't happen.
Yeah, it's like, well, we did our job and we got out. Yeah, well, how about the people you left behind? How about, what's going on? And we had the same problem, We left these people behind.
Yeah.
And it was, and there was no deal like you guys went into a deal where you tried to bring people back. You
That
had
was impossible for your generation.
Yeah,
right?
and it wasn't. We didn't have the communications. We didn't have the ability. Plus, we're still out there beating brush and still doing shit. But it was bad. It was psychologically, it was bad for us.
So what'd you do after you got out of the military? What'd you do post?
I went to work for the athletic department, University of Utah. I was the equipment manager. They hired me right off this because I used to get cadets to come over.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell you the truth, two of them ended up colonels.
Really?
They're football players.
Yeah, it's interesting because you taught like land nav, survival to those guys, and like what better guy to teach survival than the guy?
I taught a university class in orienteering.
Wow.
A credit course.
Can you imagine? I can't even imagine
it was
taking that from you. We're actually going to talk about in the application, the Fieldcraft Survival app, some of those things, because we focus on survival and specifically some of the things that took place and how you, through your mindset and through your skill sets, were able to survive, including like the Air Force survival vest that you wore. We'll talk about that specifically. I want to say thank you so much, Pat, man, for being on the podcast.
Hey, it's a pleasure being with real SF people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I'm so happy that your progress. It's like Evan, in Black. It proves one thing: the stuff you learn, the skills you learn, you're still pushing it on. You're still doing. I bet a lot of the guys that go through these courses got their eyes on being a ranger, or Marine Force Recon, or whatever it is. But it's a stepping stone to teach people. That's like when I was at the University of Utah. Everybody I taught in a class, I pushed military on them. I said, you really want to learn this shit, you got to do this. It's like Chrissy's husband, when he used to, about joining the Marine Corps, I said, no, let me talk to you about this.
I'll give you some life advice.
I says, if you never want to see your family.
Yeah.
But that's what we put up with as SF guys. We were gone all the time.
Yeah.
I spent a year with the 22nd SAS out of Hereford Commons.
An exchange program? Did you do an exchange?
Yeah, 10th group with the Malaysia, with them stuff we weren't supposed to be doing with the Gurkhas and stuff. But
that's so awesome.
But I traded a set of jungle fatigues for an SAS jacket. I still got it at home.
That's so awesome.
But, and it was so funny. I'll tell you a real quick funny story. These guys, the Brits can't do it without a can of beer in their hands or something, And there was a pub they used to hang out in. And they drugged me down to and Dominica went with me down there, and we're sitting in the club. And of course, I'm in my jungle fatigues and shit. And this old guy sitting in the bar, remember Andy Capp, the cartoon? He looked just like Andy Capp. He had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, this little fucking squatchy hat on. And he was sitting at the stool. And he kept looking at me. And the guys are playing darts, pastime of the Brits. And I'm sitting there thinking, God, I got to get back to Barry's, man, this fucking shit. And this guy says, hey, mate. He says, you're a Yank, aren't you? Yeah, he says U.S. Army. all the SAS guys stopped the, oh, God.
Oh, no.
Here we go. So I was sitting there, and he says, "You know what's wrong with you Yanks?" And I'm Irish. I'm Irish and Scotch. So, the English are not our favorite animal.
Yeah.
So anyhow, he sat there, and I said, "No, but I'm sure you're going to tell me." He said, "You're not a pure blood."
Oh.
I looked at him and I said, "You're right. But we kicked your ass in 2 wars and dug you out of 2 others. And what the fuck you think I'm doing here right now?" He didn't know what to say. I thought he was going to fall off there. And all the SAS guys said, "Time to go."
Oh my gosh, man, that's so awesome. Yeah, all the things that you've seen, Pat, it's amazing. We're proud of you. We're actually looking forward to this legislation push to have this
I
upgraded.
appreciate that. It takes another SF guy to understand this.
Yeah, it's a huge
You
deal.
can't explain it to anybody else.
It's
They
a
think
huge
you're
deal.
crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy position to be in because I'm starstruck in a really good way because we looked up to you guys so much, but to be able to talk to you about these things and these experiences as a Green Beret is an amazing opportunity for me, and I think a lot of people listening who aren't even in the military who listen to this podcast will glean a lot from this experience, and we just want to say we appreciate you and all the guys that have served with you guys, and all the sacrifices you made for our country.
Appreciate it. It's the new modern SF is head and shoulders above those guys because we were working off of goddamn jury rig operations and stuff. But you guys are shit for hot. You're really good. And I always laugh. I says, typical special operators, you don't have the need to know.
Yeah, so true.
And you don't want to know.
It's true. There's stuff that you never want to know. I appreciate you, Pat. Thank you so much.